Picture yourself in the CELPIP listening test, relaxed and ready. You catch the keywords, follow the audio easily, and stay focused until the end. When it's over, you walk out smiling, knowing you have achieved the score you need. Your Canadian dream is one step closer to reality. In this video, you'll learn what separates CLB 7 candidates from CLB 12 candidates and how to prepare for the CELPIP listening test so you can score highly. If you're ready to study smarter, stay tuned. By the end of this lesson, you'll know exactly how to prepare with strategy and total confidence. If you want to achieve the CELPIP score you need, check out our CELPIP packages. We'll guide you step by step on how to score high, so you'll feel confident on test day. Just click on the link in the description. And now, let's get started. Let's start with tip number 1. Know the test structure. If you know what to expect, you won't be surprised by the format or the timing. Understanding the structure helps you stay calm and confident throughout the test. The CELPIP listening has 6 parts, and each part tests different listening skills. For example, in part 1, you'll hear a conversation which is about solving a problem. In part 4, you'll hear a news report which has a formal tone, similar to what you'd hear on radio or television. And in part 5, you'll watch a video of people having a discussion. To score high, it's crucial to know what each part is about. When you know what to expect in each part, you can prepare strategically. You won't waste time during the test wondering what the question is asking. This confidence can make a huge difference in your performance, especially under time pressure. Let's move on to tip number 2. Understand the question types. To achieve CLB 12 in CELPIP listening, you must understand the 3 main types of questions you'll encounter. When you recognize the question type, you can apply the right strategy for answering it. The first type is general meaning questions. These are big picture questions that ask you to understand the overall topic or main idea of a conversation or a large section of audio. For example, a question might ask what the speakers are mainly discussing or what they all agree about. The second type is specific information questions. These questions focus on one particular detail that a speaker mentioned, such as a specific fact. You need to identify this precise piece of information from the audio. The third type is inference questions. These are more challenging because the answer isn't directly stated in the audio. You need to use the information you heard to draw a conclusion about something. For example, you might need to determine how a speaker feels about a situation based on their tone of voice, or predict what someone will probably do next. Let's move on to tip number 3. Use the right note-taking strategies. Many candidates worry that taking notes will distract them from listening. However, taking notes during the listening test is essential because the audio passages are long and packed with details. Use keywords and abbreviations to save time. For example, write MGR for manager, INFO for information, or PROB for problem. The faster you can write your notes, the more you can focus on understanding what you're hearing. You might want to arrange your notes differently for different types of audio. For conversations, you could note what each speaker says separately. For news reports or viewpoints, you might focus on key facts. It's extremely important to practice note-taking before test day, because you need to simulate the real test experience. Let's look at tip number 4. Focus on general ideas first. When you're listening to the audio, you must understand the basic idea of what's being discussed. To do that, you can't panic about every single word. If you encounter a vocabulary word you don't know, don't panic. CLB 12 candidates understand that you can still achieve an excellent score even if you don't know every single word. Instead of stopping and worrying about one unfamiliar term, try to grasp the basic idea of the sentence. Ask yourself whether the person is agreeing or disagreeing, whether they're expressing a positive or negative opinion, or whether they're providing a solution or describing a problem. Don't give up because you hear a few words you don't recognize. Keep listening for the overall meaning and try to piece together the information you need to answer the questions accurately. By the way, if you want this channel to keep going, write yes in the comments, click like and subscribe. We only make videos that you actually want to watch. We'll move on to tip number 5. Recognize common conversation patterns. Knowing how the CELPIP audios are typically structured gives you a huge advantage because you know what to expect. For example, in part 1, the structure usually follows a predictable pattern. One person presents a problem and the other person asks clarifying questions. They then discuss possible solutions and finally, they agree on a course of action. In part 4, the reporter usually introduces the main event and provides background information. They might then include quotes from people involved and end with current developments or future implications. Knowing these common patterns helps you predict what type of information is coming next. This makes it easier to stay focused and take effective notes throughout each part of the test. Let's continue with tip number 6. Pay attention to tone and intonation. Tone and intonation are incredibly important in CELPIP listening, especially for achieving CLB 12. Tone refers to the attitude or emotional feeling a speaker communicates. For example, is the speaker excited, frustrated, or confident about the situation? The speakers don't usually express their feelings directly by saying things like, "I'm really frustrated right now." Instead, they express themselves indirectly through their tone of voice and word choice. For example, someone might say, "I can't believe my bus is late again." The frustration is clear from how they say it, not just from the words themselves. Understanding tone helps you answer inference questions correctly. When a question asks how someone feels about a situation, your answer should be based on the emotional cues you picked up from their voice. Tip number 7 is anticipate paraphrasing in answer choices. This is one of the most important skills for scoring highly in CELPIP listening. The answer choices usually don't use the exact same words as the audio. CELPIP tests your ability to understand meaning, not just recognize words. Therefore, you'll encounter words and phrases in the answer choices that paraphrase what was said in the audio. Paraphrasing means expressing the same idea using different words. For example, the speaker might say, "I'll reserve tickets for the concert." The correct answer might say, "The speaker will book concert tickets." Notice how reserve becomes book. They mean essentially the same thing in this context, but the word has changed. Train yourself to think in terms of meanings and concepts rather than exact phrases. This can dramatically improve your performance, especially on more difficult questions. Now, here's tip number 8. Learn to identify speaker agreement and disagreement. In conversational English, people don't always say, "Yes, I agree with you," or "No, I disagree." Instead, they express agreement and disagreement in more subtle, natural ways, and you need to recognize these patterns. Agreement might be expressed enthusiastically with phrases like, "That's a fantastic idea," or "Absolutely, let's do that." Disagreement is often expressed more carefully or indirectly. Someone might say, "I'm not sure about that," or "That's one way to look at it," but they might hesitate with words like or "well" before presenting an alternative viewpoint. This politeness is typical in Canadian English, where people often soften disagreement to maintain a positive conversational tone. Tag questions can also be confusing if you're not familiar with them. A tag question is a short question added to the end of a statement. Here are a few examples. This is important, isn't it? You'll be there on time, right? These tags are seeking confirmation or agreement. The meaning changes depending on whether the tag is positive or negative. For example, "You're coming, aren't you?" expresses the expectation that the answer is yes. However, "You're not coming, are you?" suggests the speaker thinks the answer might be no. Understanding these subtle ways of expressing agreement and disagreement helps you answer questions about speaker opinions and viewpoints accurately, a skill that's especially important in Part 5 and Part 6. Tip number 9 is listen for signposting language. Signposting language refers to words and phrases that speakers use to guide listeners through their ideas. These words are essential for understanding how information is organized and how different points relate to each other. First, pay attention to sequencing words that show the order of ideas or steps. Words like first, next, and lastly signal that a speaker is moving through a series of points. When you hear these words, you know a new idea or step is being introduced. Contrast words are equally important. These are words like but, nevertheless, and although. They indicate that the following information contrasts with or contradicts what was just said. When you hear these words, you know to expect a different perspective or an opposing viewpoint. This is particularly useful in Part 6, where a speaker presents different viewpoints on the same topic. Next, cause and effect words are essential to understand relationships between events or ideas. These are words like therefore, as a result, or consequently. They are especially important when listening to a news item in Part 4. By actively listening for these signposting words and phrases, you can better follow the structure of the audio, anticipate what's coming next, and identify the most important information. This is essential for achieving CLB 12 in CELPIP listening. Let's look at tip number 10. Manage your time effectively. Time management is crucial in CELPIP listening because each part has specific time limits. To manage your time effectively, ensure you don't spend too much time on one question. If you're not certain about an answer, make your best guess quickly and move on. Remember, there's no penalty for wrong answers, so it's better to choose something than to run out of time. Always keep an eye on the timer. Knowing how much time you have left helps you pace yourself appropriately throughout each part. Tip number 11 is use the context for unfamiliar vocabulary. During the CELPIP listening test, you might encounter words or phrases you haven't heard before. Many test takers have this experience. The difference between CLB 9 candidates and CLB 12 candidates is how they handle these unfamiliar words. CLB 12 candidates don't panic when they hear a word they don't recognize. Instead, they use context clues to figure out what the word probably means. Context clues are the surrounding words and sentences that give you hints about an unfamiliar word's meaning. The first step is to identify what part of speech the word is. Is it a noun, a verb, an adjective, or an adverb? This narrows down what the word might mean. For example, if the word is describing something, it's probably an adjective. Next, determine whether the word has a positive or negative meaning based on how it's used in the sentence. Listen to the speaker's tone of voice. If they sound happy or enthusiastic, the word is probably positive. If they sound concerned or disappointed, the word is probably negative. Also, look for definition clues within the audio itself. Speakers often explain or rephrase unfamiliar terms. For example, someone might say, "The exhibition, which is a large display of artwork, will open next month." Here, exhibition is defined right in the sentence. Pay attention to examples that follow the unfamiliar word. Take a look at this example. She demonstrated several techniques such as layering, blending, and shading. You can understand that techniques are methods or ways of doing something based on the examples provided. Finally, consider the overall topic being discussed. If the conversation is about solving a technical problem, the unfamiliar word might be related to technology. This context helps you make an educated guess about the word's meaning. The key is to keep listening and not get stuck on one word. Often, the general meaning of what's being said is clear, even if you don't understand every single word. Finally, here comes tip number 12. Never leave questions unanswered. There is no penalty for incorrect answers in the CELPIP listening test. Your score is based only on the number of questions you answer correctly, not on the number you get wrong. Always try to eliminate obviously wrong answer choices first. Often you can rule out one or two options that clearly don't match what you heard. This improves your chances when you're guessing between the remaining choices. Even if you completely missed a section of audio or didn't understand a question, still select an answer. Sometimes your intuition or partial understanding is better than you think, and you might get lucky. Those are 12 powerful tips for scoring CLB 12 in CELPIP listening. If you're serious about achieving the CELPIP score you need, check out our CELPIP packages using the link below. We'll guide you step by step on how to score high so you'll feel confident on test day. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you're notified when the next video comes out. Also, share this video with your friends so they can improve their CELPIP score too. See you in the next video!